So, hello everybody. My name is Dr. Ijeh, and I am the Naturopathic Doctor here at Balance and Birch. And I'm currently chatting with David. I'll let David introduce himself.
Hi, I'm David. I'm the personal trainer with Balance and Birch.
And today we're gonna talk about something that may be a little bit controversial, not really, but something, really an interesting topic that I'm pretty sure um is concerning for, some people out there. So we're going to be discussing the role of like religion and spirituality and our unique experiences, utilizing maybe some of the more spiritual practices such as hypnosis and reiki and sound baths, being a Christian, how we navigate that, our experience with it, and what are some of our views concerning it.
Yeah. Um, and so do you just want to jump right in?
Yeah, we can.
Awesome. So I I grew up in a super old school church. Very, very strict, very you don't do anything that hasn't been prescribed to you by your pastor. Um, and I think I gained a lot of discipline and rigor in living my life that way, and I certainly gained things from it. Um, but what I found was there was a closed mindedness to certain things that, in my opinion, came a lot from lack of understanding or lack of familiarity. Like especially like with hypnosis. Like I don't know if you from your background had anything um where like I like had like people in my church who would like warn me about stuff like that. They'd be like that's a portal. Don't do it. You don't want to you don't want to go into those kinds of things. And
Hmm.
I think conversations like that are totally normal because, you know, ultimately it can be an unknown feeling, but I think what you give to it also matters because if I love Jesus and I'm doing a hypnosis session with somebody, well, I'm not forking over the control of my life to something. And I think that's the biggest misunderstanding is, you know, when we were doing things like hypnosis, is it's not like I ever necessarily lost control, especially during a lot of like like the super like more conscious driven parts. Um, you know, it's it's easy to think that those things can, I guess, uh invite energies and spirits and entities that you're not familiar or comfortable with. But I think when you use it as a body practice, like what am I doing here? Like I'm just getting lost in thought. I'm getting into a loose trance thought. And if I'm a Christian, I mean, I'm probably going to be a better Christian when I get lost in my thoughts as a Christian. You know, I'm not going to be thinking about things that are super out there and divorced from my belief system. You know, I was, confronting things about my belief system. Did you have a similar experience with that?
I agree. Like, I mean, I've heard from I wouldn't say my church in particular, they don't really touch on that, but other people from my church around me and maybe friends that are also Christian, they're like, oh, don't do some of these practices because like so similar to what you said, that you're inviting the devil in and you're opening up, portals to hell and all these. So I view it as I like to really focus more on my relationship with God. I don't know if that makes sense. So like I try not to be too religious because I just feel like then you fall into all of these the so-called like you just get a little bit too polarizing, so to say. So I try not to, be too, I really just try to focus on that aspect of my life. So like I view things as I allow God to like nudge me in a direction. And like if he's, like there's a feeling that you get, like, when God is talking to you. So like when he, gives me that feeling when I know I feel uncomfortable or something, that's when I, venture away from it. So as far as these practices and concerned, and when we were doing it, I really was more so focused on, Lord, are you really, are you okay with me doing this? If not, let me know. Like if I felt like kind of a urge or like a really strong aversion to it, I was gonna like be like no. But because I didn't really get that, and then God kind of, like let me know, in his own way that he was with me, that, I had nothing to worry about, just focus on him. So the whole time I was just really focused on my connection and not even what the naysayers were, told me. People can just tell you anything, and they're not God. They're not, at the end of the day, they're just gonna tell you what they believe. But I believe, the Christian, it all boils down to like your personal relationship and, what do you believe in, your connection with God. I feel like it's more important for you to connect and get that inspiration or be driven or guided, with the Holy Spirit, than listening to, like, that's how people get deceived by people or false prophets and all these things. So I really try to like be careful and take what people are saying with a grain of salt. Even if these people are saying that they're Christians, anybody can say what they are. But who's to say they really are anyway? But anyway, my point is that I just really try to focus on that. And the only way I'm not gonna do something or I'm not gonna engage in it, if God gives me a clear direction that no, I don't want you doing this thing. This is not right. Believe me, He will warn me. He will caution me. And I feel like if you have that connection, if you have that relationship, like you will know whether something is right for you at the moment, whether you should be like staying away from that thing, staying clear, or whether it's okay. It's a go ahead. So in that moment, I just felt like, God was with me. He just gave me a reassurance that He was protecting me, that He's with me, and He just wanted me to kind of focus on Him. So I think that's what helped me to be able to get through that session and really just realizing that He was in control of it, and He was not going to allow any type of spirits or anything to get to me. That He was the source, and I was just really, really just focused on Him the whole time.
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting that you bring up the relationship aspect because you and I come from similar cloths, but then different cloths in that sense. Because I'm also a very, relationship person, but I really get lost in the religion factor. And that people are totally different. It's about doing what feels best for you, makes you feel most connected. And I think about what Saint Augustine says, where or I guess the concept that comes from Saint Augustine, where he says, religion is the ritualistic giving unto God of what is already his. And that it's important because I feel like people get lost in specific actions where they're saying, oh, I have to go to church, I have to go and pray, I have to do this, and this is exactly what worship looks like. Pardon me. But I mean, in most of the instances, like worship is actually just like a urge to build something, like an urge to create, whether it's an idea or a capacity or a boat. you know, More often than not, it's about using the gifts and tools that you're given to honor God. And I think people, of course, you want to be wary, because if you're a Christian and you go into meditation and you don't want to hear from things
Mm,
or be urged by certain things, but you feel like you're kind of the kind of person to be tempted into that kind of thing.
mm,
Maybe it's not for you, and I think that's okay.
mm,
But I think if you're somebody who you're diligent in your belief and you're staying and you're looking to get a deeper understanding of what you already believe, then doing something like the guided session with Allie,
mm,
something that did for me was it's like I'm going to get centered on what I think is important and I'm going to get lost in all of the details. And in the process of me getting lost in all the details, I kind of just drifted off into thought.
mm,
And that would be the only part where I would say I wasn't regulating my mind, but it was more of like a dream state, is how I felt. But I think the idea that it's not that's anything that we don't experience just throughout our lives as Christians. Like we all have really intense daydreams sometimes. At least I do. We all have probably pretty intense dreams. Um, and for me, I don't think that every time I have a dream, I'm having something attack me or that it's bad. I'm often looking for where God is trying to lead me. What is the message in this dream? What are you trying to communicate with it? And I feel like it was the same thing with the hypnosis, where it's like I'm going to bring myself here, God. What are you trying to tell me? Where are you trying to lead me? Make it clear. And again, if if you don't feel like you can have that kind of discipline, or you feel like, you know, you're not wholly understanding and or grounded in what it is that you believe, maybe, like I said again, for your spiritual journey as a Christian in particular, it might not be the best idea for you to go into a, a state of lostness, almost is like how I can describe it. Um, but all of the, whether it's the saints or the people before us or Jesus himself, they would all, meditate on the word. What does that actually mean? Does it mean I'm, om, or am I reading a passage, thinking so long, and I just get lost in thought and God takes me? To me, that's what meditating on the word is. And
Mhm.
I think people can miss out on really good opportunities to see things from different lenses when they get rigid about what is and isn't meditation, what is and isn't worship, what is and isn't like a proper practice. As long as you don't leave your meditation session being like saying everything that's like anti-church, that would be evidence that like maybe this isn't good for you.
I agree.
Um, but as long as you have spiritual people in your, if you're a Christian or whether you're, a Muslim or Jewish or whatever you are, whatever you're practicing, as long as you have those leaders in your faith walking alongside you, keeping an eye on you, making sure that you're staying along the path that you ascribe that you want to be on, venturing into these kinds of things, you should be careful.
Mm.
Um, but it's not the boogeyman, because if you're getting lost and wayward, your brother should be calling you out and saying, "Hey,
Mm.
you were this guy a month ago. What's going on?" um, but that's how I felt about it.
No, I agree too. I mean, I get what you're saying too. I mean, I think at the end of it, really, it depends on how you view Christianity or like how you view your faith or where you're at in your faith. I think that's what really it boils down to. And like you said, like there's nothing wrong if you don't feel comfortable. And that's what I said is an individual thing too. I think it's somewhat subjective. I think, you know, I personally think I just feel like you shouldn't really too much focus on what I think that's what I'm trying to get at. Don't focus too much on what you've heard from a fellow Christian friend or something. I think you have to know your relation, your what you believe in your faith for yourself. You have to know God for you. It's not about you just relying on what somebody is saying. Again, when you're like reading your word, like you mentioned, you can get inspiration from that. God can speak to you in various ways. But I think it boils down to like testing the spirit, this idea of testing the spirit. So like once you test the spirit, and like they say in the word, by their fruits you shall know them. You test spirits, you do that just so you can make sure is what I'm hearing, is this biblical, or is God telling me, did God send this person to me to give me this message, or did he not? Or being very kind of discerning is discernment too. So once you can discern, and once you feel like you're advancing your faith, you probably, things like that probably wouldn't get to you. You'll know how to fight these things. And like I said, I'm a believer too. I don't like to open myself to any type of portals. And actually, funny story, I just want to pivot a little bit. Actually, I was watching this really movie that I really probably shouldn't have watched. I really regret it because the title really was deceiving. I really assumed it was about something like a spiritual movie. I thought it was like a Christian-based film. It was titled something about oh, I forgot the name right now. Whether it was the disciple, no, not disciple, something. But anyway, the
Oh, the
title.
apostle.
No, not that one. It was on Netflix. It was like this haunted house. It was about, I guess, some demons haunted a house. This lady. She was like a single mom and her children. It was on Netflix. I want to get the name of that. I have to find that name. But anyway, I watched that movie. And when I say I was encountering really bad things for like that week, to the point where it was affecting me and my family. And I was just, that's what I mean about like I didn't really discern, and I feel like I jumped into watching it without asking God first. Normally I'm good at that, but for some reason in that moment I just went into watching it. And I regretted that thing. When I say I was having nightmares, I couldn't sleep. For that week, it was really bad. I was just like my family was just having random fights. It was just really, and I can tell this was a spiritual thing. And it took a lot for me to cleanse out whatever negative energy I invited from that movie. Like, and then I heard after that, I actually heard that some of the actors on that set that they started experiencing some supernatural things in their life too from even shooting that movie. Some people were like having cancer diagnoses, families were dying, and it was causing a lot of havoc. So this thing was inviting serious demons into people's house. And I experienced it personally. So I was like, yeah, that's why you really got to test the spirits and discern and make sure you be careful about what you let in. So I understand that too. Because like I said, I experienced it with this movie. And I'm gonna get you that title while we're talking at one point because I really wanna, but also
Yeah.
stay away from that movie, especially if you're somebody that's a believer. Don't do it to yourself. Because I regret it. I'm just happy now, God, thank you, Jesus, that now that thing was off because I have to go into some really serious prayers and deliverance prayers for that thing to like finally be gone from my family. But yeah, so my point of me sharing that is that it's like the same thing with this. If you scared that, maybe some type of negative energy or whatever, you're gonna invite it in with this, then that's fine too. But just make sure you discern, test the spirits for yourself to see whether this is something that may harm your life or maybe it's something that will not do anything because you know you have that shield, that protection, and you're faithful that God is with you in that moment and that He's already blocked off any type of evil spirits from you. So that's just my little 2 cents. But I'm gonna find that movie while David is sharing his stuff.
And I think discernment is the most important thing, and I think going back to the, trees and their fruit, if this is good for me, then there will be good fruit. If this is something that's bad for me, then it's going to wreak havoc in my life. The thing that I challenge most people to is sitting down, slowing down, and thinking, and letting your brain do a little bit of the working. That more often than not isn't going to take you as far as you think it's going to go. Like you're, and I maybe Allie's a better person to ask about this, but I would imagine not everybody is just going off the deep end every time they get like lost a little bit in thought.
Mhm.
And I think, you know if you're somebody who, when you get lost in thought, you're very prone to having wicked and awful thoughts, then hey, this isn't for you. And you should discern that when you do this action, it's not good for you. And you actually need to be on guard for these kinds of things.
Mhm.
Um, but I think when you're, for me, I'm a young man. And, I think something like for you, where you have probably more maturation in your discernment, um, where, you watch a movie and you could be like, pinpointed. You see, I do my best as a Christian young man. I try to live by the faith as best as I can, but we all fall short. And so something where you have the spiritual discernment to say, nope, I can pinpoint, I let this into my life, and that is when things started going wrong. I probably have like two or three things that I'm like juggling that I need to be doing better in. And I'm like, it might be one of these things.
Mhm.
um, but getting to that point, and I think that's the most important thing is if you have that ability to discern um, the voices that are coming through and putting them to the test by saying, are you bearing me good fruit or bad fruit? Um, that's really all the gospels are mostly teaching you. Jesus came and died for you. He loved you. He died for the world, and beware of false teachers. Um,
Mhm.
but I think I again, I just philosophically and like thinking of I get into the philosophical of God a lot. And the idea that God would program us with this ability to get slowed down and lost in thought, and that somehow the demons, who God already has control over, the demons can't do anything unless God says so. They bow down to his command. Somehow he programmed this thing that when I get into this state, everything just leeches on. I think if you're prone to allowing stuff to leech onto you, yes, that will happen. I think if you have discernment, I think if you are standing strong in your faith, if you have the discipline to hear something and be able to say, nope, that does not go, that does not align with what I believe, then the threat, it's not a threat, you know? The only, like, I, like, for me, and I still ponder like what I went through when I was getting lost in thought during our session with Allie. You know, because at no point did I ever feel it was sacrilegious. I wanted it to be like a religious thing. I was like, God, I'm thinking about you. Like I don't know what everybody else is thinking about, but I'm thinking about you.
Mhm.
And you know, for me, I I how do I phrase this? Not everything is supposed to be clear in the moment. And I think that is what makes people prone to giving things false intention. So I had like a super, like, I think you remember me telling you, like, my heart was beating out of my chest, and I was having like there was a guy in the background, and I was walking on a boulder, and it made no sense to me, and it was stressful.
Mhm.
And if I don't have the discipline to say, well, the meaning to me, if there is a meaning, is not clear right now. And
Mhm.
so I need to wait until I see what it is, think about what it is until I pray and God gives me another nugget of information because he's awesome in that way. Um, you know, but if I go and try to attribute false meanings to that vision, to that um dream state, lack of a better word, I just don't have the right vocabulary. um, but if I try to give false um, meaning to it, and I stand by it, and I try to believe in it, and you know I do the sunken cost fallacy. Where I'm like, no, it's definitely this, it's definitely this, and then I start making life decisions, gearing myself towards it. That's where it can be a dangerous thing. But where I had this experience where, I mean, all in all, it was a challenging experience. It was not easy for me. And I had that moment where my heart was beating out of my chest and I had no idea what was really going on. Um, but I believed that God had me and God was using that moment and whatever it was. Um, and like I said, that meaning to me isn't totally clear. And I think having a willingness to say that and be patient is something that with meditation or, you know, everybody wants to think they have the revelation from God. And I'm like, God did a pretty good job at revealing himself already. So, you know, I always, I don't think of my brain as something that God is using to reveal his kingdom. He already revealed it. I think my brain is a tool that he uses to challenge me to greater see him in creation already. Meaning, like, it, the challenge of it. What is this earth? What are these things? What are these experiences when we're in like a weird dream state? You know, I think those are all things that God uses. The question, the challenge, the pursuit of the answers. You know, that's all some things that God uses to reinforce your belief in him. At least that's how I view it.
No, you really brought up a lot of really good points. I agree. And I think people get, and I think the revelation thing is, where people get in trouble as Christians. Because everybody wanted to say that they got something from God, or, there's a lot of false things out there to tell you. People just always take advantage of that. They capitalize off of that. They know that people are always looking for a miracle or something, or, some type of sign and wonder. And I think that's where people get lost in the sauce and where problems arise. And I think that's what really gets people. But like again, you just have to really get to a very comfortable part in your faith where you for sure know, yes, this is what it is. This is how, God speaks to me. This is what religion means for me. This is how I feel things. This is how I connect. This is what, I know how to do. This is how I get guided. So be careful with that too. Like you said, like I just want to piggyback off of you saying, yeah, we have to be careful too. I know I'm kind of preaching too much about believers, but yeah, but as believers, we really do have to be careful. Again, that's how people just get sucked in, and and I'm just like of the belief that it's not more so about, the religion of it all. Because even in the Bible, it says faith without works. I think people rely so much on that or the doing. They like to focus on so much on the doing and think, oh, I'm trying to please God. I have to do this and that. But they get lost, and that's why there's a part in the Bible that says, "But you doing all these things," and then they say, "Oh, I fed the poor. I did this." Well, did you know me? God will ask you, did you know me? Do you spend time? Do you really know him? Like, do you prioritize your time with him or just the doing? Do you feel like you're doing it? And that's not what it's about. I just feel like he more so wants us to have a connection. He wants us, the Holy Spirit wants to live with us. He wants to dwell with us. But you have to get to that place where you really know him, where he really can call you your friend. And I think that's what we all should aspire to at the end of the day. And I think that's what's going to be most important because we're talking about all these type of stuff, all these type of so that you don't get caught up. Because again, this world is more spiritual than we think and then we know. So you really have to get there, and you have to aim to get there if you're not there already. And that's what's really going to help you in a lot of aspects in your life, including what we're talking about today. And I think that's how I was able to get to that point and know, okay, I'm okay. I'm gonna be okay. You speak to him any chance you get. You don't have to just focus on like some type of just a formal prayer in your house or what you before. No, you can speak to God any day, in any moment. Me personally, any decision I'm gonna make, whether big or small, I'm always going to him. Even with this, I really, really prayed on it. Because I'm like, one thing I'm not gonna do is mess with this person. And by the way, I actually got the name of that movie, The Deliverance.
Oh, I don't think I've ever seen that. I'm not going to see that one, but I don't think I ever have.
Oh yeah, so stay away from that movie, I'm telling you. And then after that, after the fact, when I already watched the thing, then I started seeing all the reports of people saying that they had a whole bunch of occurrences happen to them, even on set and even after. I was like, yeah, I don't know why I just jumped into it and that was my mistake. But yeah, I paid for it. But anyway,
Hmm.
but
And,
yeah,
and I think, especially,
yeah.
because we've spoken largely from the Christian perspective because it's,
Oh,
who we are.
hmm.
And, one of the things that I think about a lot is two-faceted. One, what you said about spirituality and people needing to open up their willingness to see things as a spiritual world more so.
Hmm.
Um, I think it's actually happening. As a young kid, I would always hear people in the church like, well, how do we convince all the children and all the people in America to see the world as through at least a spiritual lens, not even through a Christian lens, but through a spiritual lens. And it really wasn't working. I honestly think world events brought more people to spirituality than anything else. But being willing to see things through um, that lens of spirituality, because once you do, I think when we think about things like what you were saying, which is, it's about this relationship with me, and it's about actually getting to know me and my principles and loving God, not just about the religious practice. I think about the time where Jesus was talking to the Pharisees, and he had said to them, "You'll come to me, and on that day, we will say, Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy, and in your name did we not cast out demons?" And then he says to them, "Depart from me, you who practice evil, for I never knew you."
Hmm.
Um, and I think that's important, one, for your own discernment when you're going through things. Make sure you're not practicing evil. Make sure you're not getting spit out. um, but it's important because in the time, the Pharisees were practicing a hyper religiosity. They were hyper legal when it came to the law. And that religion was dead. By the law, they were dead. No man could fulfill the law.
Yeah.
And so by their own practice, they weren't meeting their own standard. And so I think the religiosity is something that's easy to get lost in, but what you miss is like this moment where it's like, hey, it's not about tithing. It could be. If you're a rich person, this message might be about tithing. You know, if you're a selfish person, this message might be about doing things for other people. But whatever it is, but I think the religiosity makes you miss what God's actually telling you, which is you have individual sins and you have individual ailments in your spirit that you need to uh, remedy
Hmm.
through the love of God, through worship, through submitting your will to God's will. Um, and I think when you get lost in the fact that, okay, I'm paying the 20%, I'm saying the prayers, I do this, I do that, I'm checking the boxes and going to heaven,
Hmm.
you miss that this was about being transformed. This was about, I think about Nicodemus, where it's like, well, how is somebody supposed to be born of their mother again? Is he supposed to go back through the birthing canal and then through? And Jesus like, no, you just become a new person spiritually. Like you are totally renewed. This isn't a physical rebirth, it's a spiritual rebirth. And I
Hmm.
think people miss that part. They have like a behavioral rebirth, but they don't have a spiritual rebirth.
Exactly. Yeah, everything you're saying, I echo it. And that's exactly the point I was trying to get across, but you really beautifully just said it. Yes, at the end of the day, what we're trying to say is, you really just have to know it in your heart, in your conscience. Like if you feel like something is telling you, this is not it, I would say follow it. It's most likely it's God or the Holy Spirit directing you, telling you this is not what He wants for you. But if you feel like He gave you that reassurance and He told you it's okay, we're gonna, I'm with you, focus on me, then so be it. Yeah, and then for those of you that may not be as religious or don't really hold to any Christian values or beliefs, um, the same thing. I'm sure everybody has to have some type of a nudging or gut feeling. I guess that's what you call it. So I think it's the same thing as discerning, but you can call it a gut feeling. If you feel like your gut is telling you, stray away from it, then I will listen to it, and that's okay too. But if you feel like you feel comfortable, you feel okay, your spirit is okay with it, then why not go ahead, try it out. It may not, hurt you. It may even, I think for me also, part of the experience that actually kind of helped a little bit with my spiritual experience. It actually, made me a little bit more focused, on the Holy Spirit. Kind of an interesting perspective, but it kind of made me more aware, spiritually sensitive in a way. Like I felt it. And it really helped to kind of boost up my faith and my confidence in God. Because I think after that, really, I just really got even more close. I went to like greater heights in my spiritual life. I think a little bit in a way, from it. So,
And I had a similar thing. And that's why I think it's very important for people not to be closed-minded to it.
hmm.
Um, because is Allie or if we ever have anybody else offering anything like the Reiki or anything else we're offering, you know, are they advertising this as a religious experience? No. But
Hmm.
I'm sure they're pretty open to the fact of you saying, hey, I'm a religious person. This is going to be a little bit of a can like how can you work with that? Is there things that we can do, prompts we can go through where we can make this more comfortable for me?
Hmm.
And turning it into a religious experience. This isn't inherently a religious experience or a spiritual experience unless you make it one. And I think that is the important part because what did I feel from when we did that exercise with Allie? Um, Deep-seated fear. Which you know what I do when I have deep-seated fear? I return to God. I don't have the answers. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm lost. I'm wayward, and I'm so weak and impotent, and I just need you. Um, and is that what Allie prescribed? No, but it made me a much better Christian.
Hmm.
And I won't even say it's not necessarily what she prescribed because what she prescribed was for you to know more about yourself.
Hmm.
I might have been in fear of something, or maybe I should have been in fear and I wasn't. And I just think all of these things, ye of little faith, if you believe God is there and you believe he can use things for his benefit and for his kingdom, then he will. And if you don't think he can, then he won't.
Exactly. Exactly. It really just boils down to your faith and your inner belief. If you know you're not there, I would just say, no, for now, park it. But if you feel like you're at a good point, you have to be somebody that's really solid in their faith and their belief. Then okay, go for it. But it's something that you take your time with. I wouldn't advise you to just jump in, but it's something I really would advise that you really take time to reflect on and really see if this thing is right for you, to be honest. Yeah, at the end of the day, I think that's what it boils down to. It's really
Yeah.
where you're at.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh no, that's it. That's all I was gonna say.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say, like, I totally agree. I think it's to the person. Um, and I think I I think it is not a boogeyman. If people want to make it a boogeyman, it's not a boogeyman. And I think when you have a willingness and a consciousness to open up to these kinds of things and keep God in the center of it, people tell God he can't do things all the time. People tell God he can't use moments, use things, use events all the time. Regardless of whatever you believe, it is whether you're again a Muslim, Jewish, or you're Christian or Catholic or whatever you are. Now is the time where it is the across the board number one participation across the board worldwide, all religions. So whoever your God is, he is doing something right now in all the turmoil. And I think that's a reason for hope. I kind of lost my train of thought there. Oh,
No,
the
that was
idea
good.
the idea that God can't use things. He
Mhm.
can't, and he currently is.
Oh, that was really good. So we have 2 minutes. So just any final thoughts, any last minute,
um,
this thing cuts us off.
awesome. I don't have any final thoughts, but I always love talking with you, Anne. This was awesome.
Yes, this was. I really enjoyed this. Anything talking about my faith and spirituality is, yeah, right up my alley. I love talking about it. I can talk about it all day. This was great, and I hope, people gained a lot from this. I hope this provided some insight, and helps you make a better decision as to if you want to try it or not. Yeah, this was really fun. Hope to do more of these type of talks.
Yeah, me too. I hope to do more, and I hope to keep challenging each other, Anne.
Yes, yes, for sure, for sure.